The Tervari Dominion had ruled the sector for over 10,000 years. Their military power was unrivaled, their defenses impenetrable. And at the heart of their strength stood Fortress Kael'Rax, a station so heavily armed and shielded that no species had ever dared attack it. It was their greatest stronghold, their ultimate defense. And they were about to learn that against humanity, it was nothing more than paper. The battle begins. The Tervari High Command had received word of a human fleet approaching Kael'Rax. They weren't concerned. Their fortress had withstood wars, rebellions, and planetary sieges. No force had ever breached its defenses. Admiral Vorak stood on the command deck, watching the holoscreens display the incoming human fleet. His mandibles clicked in amusement. "They're fools," he said to his officers. "Let them come. Their ships will shatter against our walls." The fortress activated its planetary-grade shields, a shimmering energy barrier that had deflected attacks from entire armadas. Around the station, thousands of Tervari warships moved into formation, prepared to crush the approaching fleet. The humans should have turned back. Instead, they accelerated. The first shock. The human fleet arrived in perfect formation, their ships sleek and efficient. But they weren't slowing down. Vorak narrowed his eyes. "They're coming in too fast." A junior officer spoke. They're not firing weapons. They're..." The lead human warships suddenly vanished from sensors. No explosions. No debris. Just gone. And then, before anyone could react, they reappeared inside the Tervari formation. Not outside. Inside. The humans had used a hyper-short-range warp drive, a tactic thought to be suicidal. No species had ever used it in battle because even a small miscalculation would mean crashing into a planet or a ship at light speed. But the humans? They had mastered it. Before the Tervari fleet could react, the first human warships opened fire. The shields mean nothing. Kael'Rax's shields were designed to withstand massive external attacks, planetary bombardments. Siege weaponry. They were not designed for precision strikes from inside their own fleet. Human weapons tore into critical weak points. *** shield generators, command hubs, weapons erased ***. Entire sections of the fortress went dark within minutes. Vorak's eyes widened. This wasn't a conventional attack. This was surgical warfare. Adaptation in real time. Tervari ships scrambled to counter the humans, but their fleet was in disarray. Their battle formations, once perfect, were now a death trap. Their ships were packed too tightly together. ***, a weakness humanity had just exploited ***. The human fleet moved like a predator, diving in, striking hard, and vanishing again. Tervari battleships tried to retaliate, but their weapons couldn't lock onto ships that disappeared and reappeared at will. Vorak clenched his fists. Impossible. No species can navigate hyperspace with such precision. One of his officers turned, voice shaking. "Sir, we are losing." Kael'Rax falls. The fortress defensive guns, once considered unstoppable, were going silent. Human forces had already landed inside. Tervari warriors fought in the hallways of their own stronghold, but they were outmatched. The humans didn't fight like Tervari soldiers. They didn't fight fair. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, using guerrilla tactics, hacking security systems, shutting down power grids. By the time Vorak received the final casualty reports, his stomach dropped. "Sir," his second-in-command whispered, "we've lost control of the fortress." The battle was over. The unbreakable fortress of Kael'Rax had been broken. And as Admiral Vorak stood in stunned silence, a single transmission came through the comms. A human voice. Cold. Precise. Unapologetic. "You thought your walls would save you. You were wrong. And now you will learn what it means to fear us." The screen went dark. And the human fleet moved toward its next target. The fall of Fortress Kael'Rax sent shockwaves through the Tervari Dominion. For 10,000 years, no enemy had ever breached their walls. No species had ever defied their rules so completely. Now, the humans had torn through their strongest defenses as if they were nothing. And the Tervari could not allow it to stand. This wasn't just about war anymore. This was about revenge. The wrath of the Tervari High Command. The Tervari Grand Council met in emergency session, deep inside the capital world's command citadel. The holoscreens displayed burning wreckage where Kael'Rax had once stood. Images of dead Tervari soldiers, annihilated warships, and human forces standing where the Dominion's greatest warriors had once ruled. The room was silent. Until Supreme Commander Zakul spoke. His voice was calm. Controlled ***, but filled with rage. "The humans believe they are victorious." His mandibles clicked with disgust. "They believe we will fear them." He turned to his assembled generals, his eyes burning with cold fury. They will learn what it means to provoke the Dominion. The Tervari did not take humiliation lightly. And now, the full force of their empire was about to fall upon humanity. Operation Firestorm, the Tervari counterattack. The human fleet was still celebrating their victory when the Tervari struck back. 30,000 warships, the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled, were dispatched. Their target? The human fleet still stationed near Kael'Rax. The strategy was simple. No warnings. No negotiations, just pure annihilation. The order was given. And the Tervari fleet jumped into hyperspace. The humans were waiting. The moment the Tervari fleet exited hyperspace, expecting to ambush the human forces, they found nothing. No human fleet. No warships. Just the burning remains of Kael'Rax. Confused, Admiral Torvak ordered a full sensor sweep. The readings came back almost instantly. And what they saw should have been impossible. Because the human fleet hadn't retreated. It had moved behind them. The trap closes. Before the Tervari fleet could adjust, the humans struck. Tervari ships exploded in a storm of fire, hit by weapons they couldn't even detect. Their rear guard, once thought secure, was suddenly torn apart by human ambush teams. How? Admiral Torvak roared, watching in horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. His officers scrambled to react. "Sir, they predicted our hyperspace exit point." Torvak froze. No species could predict where a fleet would drop from hyperspace. Not unless they manipulated our jump calculations, one officer whispered. Torvak's blood ran cold. The humans had known exactly where the Tervari would arrive. And they had set the perfect trap. The ghost fleet emerges. For years, the Tervari had believed that human technology was primitive. That assumption had just cost them thousands of ships. Because the humans had figured out something no other species had. They weren't fighting with brute force. They were fighting like hunters. Using hacked hyperspace beacons, predictive AI warfare, and stealth technology so advanced it shouldn't have existed. The Ghost Fleet, as it would later be called, was invisible until it was too late. They jammed Tervari communications. They hijacked enemy targeting systems. They used pinpoint precision strikes to disable key Tervari ships. It wasn't just war. It was surgical annihilation. And the Tervari fleet? It wasn't prepared. The desperate escape. Within 30 minutes, the once mighty Tervari fleet had lost half its ships. Admiral Torvak had no choice. "This battle is lost," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He gave the order no Tervari commander had ever given before. Retreat. What was left of the fleet fled into hyperspace, broken and humiliated. For the first time in history, a Tervari counteroffensive had completely failed. And humanity? They had proven that no amount of firepower could stop them. Because they weren't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the rules of battle itself. The message to the galaxy. The defeat of the Tervari's greatest counterattack sent ripples through the entire galactic community. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear, intimidation, and overwhelming military strength. Now, they had been hunted, outmaneuvered, and humiliated. And humanity wanted to make sure everyone knew it. A transmission was sent across every major galactic channel. The image? A human commander standing among the wreckage of the Tervari fleet. Their voice? Cold. Ruthless. Final ***. You called us primitive? You thought your fortress was invincible? You thought your empire was untouchable? The commander leaned forward, staring into the camera. You were wrong. Now, we are coming for you. The transmission ended. And the galaxy held its breath. Because if humanity had just destroyed the Tervari's best defenses, their strongest fleets, and their most secure stronghold, then what would they do next? And more importantly, who could stop them? The Tervari Dominion was collapsing. Fortress Kael'Rax was gone. Their greatest counteroffensive had failed. And now, humanity was preparing the final blow. They weren't just going to win the war. They were going to wipe the Dominion off the galactic map. ### The Tervari's last stand. The remnants of the Tervari High Command met in a war chamber deep beneath their homeworld. The room was filled with panic and disbelief. Generals barked orders. Officers scrambled to gather reports. Every holoscreen displayed the same terrifying truth. Humanity had done the impossible. They had shattered the unbreakable fortress. They had crushed the greatest Tervari fleet. And now, they were coming for the capital itself. Supreme Commander Zakul stood at the center of the chaos, his claws gripping the edge of the war table. He had fought for the Dominion for 200 years, he had crushed rebellions, conquered planets, wiped out entire species. But nothing, nothing, had prepared him for humanity. How many ships remain? Zakul demanded. One of his admirals hesitated before answering. Less than 20,000. Zakul's mandibles clenched. Before the war they had commanded over 100,000 warships. Now, humanity had bled them dry. He took a slow breath. What about planetary defenses? The admiral's voice was unsteady. Strong, but they won't stop them. Zakul slammed his fist against the table. Why? The room fell silent. Finally, an intelligence officer spoke. Sir, the humans aren't just using their own ships anymore. A new holoscreen flickered to life. And what Zakul saw made his blood run cold. The rise of the hybrid fleet. The image on the holoscreen was a nightmare. A massive war fleet, bigger than anything humanity should have been capable of building, was approaching Tervari space. But it wasn't just human warships. It was a fusion of stolen Tervari dreadnoughts, hacked defense platforms and reverse-engineered alien technology. Zakul's voice dropped to a whisper. They're using our own ships against us. He stared at the floating behemoths, once proud symbols of the Dominion's might. Now, they were painted in human insignias, piloted by human crews. And they were heading straight for the Tervari capital. Humanity wasn't just fighting the war. They were consuming it. Adapting, evolving, turning every enemy asset into a weapon for themselves, Zakul had fought many wars. But he had never seen a species that learned this fast. That stole technology and made it stronger. That fought like they had nothing to lose. He turned to his war council. This isn't a war anymore, he muttered. This is extermination. The battle for Tervar Prime. The human fleet arrived without warning. One moment the Dominion's capital world, Tervar Prime was untouched. The next, hell descended from the sky. Orbital stations exploded in streaks of fire. Tervari warships, scrambling to mount a defense, were hunted down with brutal efficiency. Human forces landed across the planet, bypassing major strongholds and cutting deep into the heart of the capital. They weren't here for a prolonged war. They weren't here for negotiation. They were here to end the Dominion. Once and for all. The final stand. Inside the capital city, Tervari warriors prepared for their last fight. Supreme Commander Zakul led them himself. He wasn't going to die hiding behind walls. If this was the end of the Dominion, he would face it with a blade in his hands. The streets turned into a slaughterhouse. Tervari soldiers fought with everything they had. But humanity? They were relentless. They moved through the city like shadows, clearing entire districts in minutes. Zakul watched in horror as his forces fell back block by block. It wasn't just superior firepower. The humans were fighting smarter. They predicted every defensive formation, every counterattack. They had already studied and adapted to every Tervari tactic. Zakul knew then, this wasn't just a battle. This was a hunt. And the humans? They were the predators. The end of the Dominion. It happened faster than anyone expected. The capital fell. The last of the Tervari warlords surrendered. And as human forces stormed the command citadel, Zakul stood alone, his blade dripping with blood. The doors burst open. A single human commander stepped inside. For a long moment neither spoke. Then the human tossed a data tablet at Zakul's feet. A transmission. Zakul picked it up. Pressed play. And what he saw made him tremble. The message to the galaxy. The human fleet had sent a broadcast to every species across the stars. It showed the ruins of the Tervari Dominion. Burning cities. Destroyed warships. Captured generals. And then a simple message. A message that would change the course of history. We were called weak. We were called primitive. We were told we would never last. The camera zoomed in on the wreckage of the Tervari capital. This was your strongest empire. This was your most unbreakable fortress. And we made it look like paper. The screen cut to black. And the final words sent chills through every species that watched. We did not start this war. But now? We finish it. Who's next? The broadcast ended. And the galaxy held its breath. Because if the Tervari Dominion, one of the strongest empires in history, had fallen in days, then no one was safe. And humanity? They were just getting started. The fall of the Tervari Dominion was not just a victory. It was a shift in the balance of power across the galaxy. Empires that had once ignored humanity were now watching them with fear. Rulers who had seen Earth as a backwater world now whispered in dark chambers about the unstoppable force that had emerged from the ashes of war. And humanity? They did not stop. They could not stop. Because now that they had proven they could break the strongest empire in the known galaxy, the only question left was simple. Who would be next? The galaxy reacts. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Leaders from over 100 species gathered in the enormous circular chamber, their voices raised in arguments, their expressions ranging from terror to admiration. On the center screen, the last human transmission played once more. The ruins of the Travari homeworld. The wreckage of the once unbreakable fortress Kaelrax. And the final words of the human commander. The chamber fell silent. Then the representative of the Zorvan hegemony stood. His scaled face was unreadable, his golden robes draped over his massive frame as he addressed the assembly. We underestimated them. We thought them primitive. Now they have proven that they are not just another species. They are a force of nature. And if we do not act, they will become something far worse. The room remained silent. A member of the Qatari Dominion finally spoke. They are moving too fast. No species in history has conquered an empire this quickly. They are different. The Vailari Ascendancy, the oldest and most advanced civilization in the Council, had remained silent until now. Their representative, an ancient being with glowing silver eyes, finally spoke. They are not different. They are inevitable. The humans do not expand through diplomacy or tradition. They expand through adaptation. They take from their enemies, they evolve, and they do not stop. This is not the birth of an empire. This is the birth of something greater. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. They must be stopped, the Zorvan leader growled. Before they become the rulers of us all. But how? The Qatari representative asked. The Travari threw everything at them and they were slaughtered. What chance do we have? No one had an answer. Because for the first time in history, the strongest powers in the galaxy had encountered something they did not know how to fight. The silent war begins. Earth's new empire was growing at an unstoppable pace. Former Travari worlds fell under human control with little resistance. Some species surrendered without a fight, hoping for mercy. Others tried to resist, only to be wiped out in hours. But humanity knew that open war would not last forever. Now that they had proven their strength, their enemies would change their tactics. And they were right. The war shifted from battlefields to the shadows. Human governors on newly acquired worlds were assassinated. Resource shipments vanished in deep space. Key political figures were found dead, their security forces unable to explain how. The attacks were too coordinated to be random. Someone was pulling the strings. Earth's leaders knew what this meant. The other galactic powers had formed an alliance against them. And they were waging a war that could not be fought with warships and armies. This was not about fleets anymore. This was a battle for control. The countermove. Humanity had always been underestimated. That had been the mistake of the Travari. That had been the mistake of every empire before them. But the greatest mistake was assuming that humans could not learn. Earth's intelligence agencies moved quickly. The Terran Intelligence Initiative, a division that had once worked in secrecy, now became the most powerful force in the new empire. Spies were planted in enemy governments. Sleeper agents infiltrated the Galactic Council itself. Every leader who had plotted against Earth was now being watched. And one by one they began to disappear. The Zorvan Minister of War was found dead in his chambers, no sign of forced entry. The Qatari Supreme General's ship was discovered drifting in deep space, its entire crew missing. A secret meeting between the heads of the anti-human coalition ended in disaster when a human strike team eliminated them before they could even discuss their plans. The galaxy was learning a new truth. Humanity did not just fight wars. They fought everything. And they were better at it than anyone else. The final choice. The remaining galactic rulers faced a decision. Fight and risk total annihilation. Or surrender and let humanity reshape the galaxy. Many of them hesitated. They had spent centuries believing that they were the rightful rulers of the stars. But now their fleets were weakened. Their leadership was compromised. And every attempt to strike at Earth had only made them stronger. One by one they made their choice. Some surrendered outright, offering their worlds in exchange for their survival. Others tried to resist. They did not last long. And a few, the wisest among them, came forward with a different proposal. If humanity cannot be stopped, the Vailari representative said in the final council meeting, Then perhaps they must be guided. The Galactic Council was no more. The new government was formed under a different name, the Terran Dominion. And Earth was now at its center. The age of humanity begins. For the first time in history, the galaxy was united. Not by diplomacy. Not by centuries of negotiation. It was united through fear. Through war. Through a single, undeniable truth. Humanity was no longer just a rising power. They were the rulers of the stars. And the rest of the galaxy? They had only two choices. Stand with them. Or be crushed beneath them. The final transmission. Across every remaining world, a final message was broadcast. It was not a demand. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. You called us primitive. You thought we were weak. You thought your walls could keep us out. You were wrong. The screen flickered to black. And in that moment, the galaxy understood the new order. The age of humanity had begun. And it would never end. The end.